1. My family and I had just moved into a new house. This was right after the housing market went way up in the 2000s. So the house we were moving into was a dump, because that's all we could afford in our school district. It had previously been a crack house. The windows were busted by police, fence taken down by SWAT, needles in the garbage disposal. It was a dump. So my mom and stepdad were fixing it up before we finally moved in. We had a month to get out of the house we were renting into our new house. My sister's dad would go over after work and paint. We had to because everything was covered with graffiti. He got home one night and said, "When I got to the house today, I saw a little kid." This was after they had already replaced the windows so nobody could break in. He said he came to the house and saw a kid go from one bedroom into the master. So he went into the master bedroom and no one was there. At first he thought my mom had been there with my sister and I, and had left somebody there. When he realized we were not there, he didn't really know what happened. My mom just told him it was fumes and to open up a window and wear a mask. Keep in mind, my stepdad isn't the type of person to believe in ghosts or paranormal things, and he doesn't get scared easily, so this was out of character for him. Right after we moved in, almost instantly, my sister had an imaginary friend, which was unusual because she was never a play-pretend type of kid. She never played with dolls or anything. She was more of a computer Game Boy tech type of person. She still is today. She was always very logical and thought very scientifically. Even though she was very young at the time, it was just odd because she had never had an imaginary friend before. My mom and I were always the more artistic, wacky ones. My sister and her dad were the more logical ones, just to give you some insight. Generally, when a child invents an imaginary friend, it is because they want someone to play with. But her imaginary friend was super annoying and he was always bothering her. She would constantly complain about Mikey not sharing a toy, or he won't play this game, or he touched my juice, he's not following rules, not taking turns. Who invents an imaginary friend so they can fight with them all day? One day, my mom was out front talking to our neighbor. She was telling my mom that before the people before us, there was another family there with kids. Then she asked if we ever saw anything weird in the house. She told my mom that the family before saw stuff in the house and that their son, who was now a teenager, when he was little had an imaginary friend named Mikey. The kids that lived in our house before us also played with Mikey, and that she had seen him before. My sister and I would spend the weekends with our grandparents, and my mom would take the batteries out of all our toys because they would go off randomly when no one was in our rooms. I remember I had a piggy bank that made noise when you put money in it. One night it wouldn't stop, so I checked to see if it was jammed, but nothing was in it. So I ended up throwing it away because it wouldn't stop going off in the middle of the night. I never had any problems with sleeping before or after that house. But when we lived there, every morning I would wake up contorted in some way. I would wake up shoved in a little space between my bed and dresser in a ball, and I would always be stuck and my mom would have to help me get out in the morning. I would always try to figure out how, but never could. I was in 3rd or 4th grade at the time, and my mom had to put guards on the side of my bed, but I would still end up contorted, shoved between my dresser. This never happened when I would stay at my grandparents'. My mom worked a night job and would stay home during the day with my sister. So one night she came home from work and was washing her hands in the kitchen. From the kitchen you could see into the living room. My mom turned around because she could feel someone watching her. For a split second, there was a kid standing there. She said he looked about 8 years old. Then he was gone. Not too long after it was my sister's birthday. After the party, my sister and I went to my grandparents' house. My mom and stepdad were alone. My mom took all the balloons from the party and tied them together and put them in the corner in the living room. So they were watching TV. The air was off because the weather was nice around my sister's birthday and the fan wasn't on. All of a sudden, the balloon strings came together like somebody grabbed it, and they floated down about a foot. Then they went around the corner and really slow down the hallway. Then once it got to the light in the hallway, the balloons went down and around the light. It went down to the end of the hallway and stopped at my sister's door. My mom and stepdad were watching in shock, not knowing what to do. so my mom decided to talk to it. She said, "Hey, Mikey, if you want those balloons, you can have them." Right when she said that, the balloons went into my sister's room. Now, there used to be a Taco Bell by our house. This was before they started remodeling them, so it looked like a mission. My mom and sister and I were driving by the Taco Bell, and my sister said, "Mom, Mikey says that he used to live in the Taco Bell house." We didn't think anything of it. After we lived there for a while, my mom decided to look into the history of the property. Before it had been a cattle ranch. She then learned that right before on the property where our house and 3 others were, she found out there was a children's mission. It was funded by the Catholic Church, and they had orphans. That's when it clicked. One year my sister said, "It's Mikey's birthday, we have to have a cake." So my mom made a cake, and she marked it with a little dot on the calendar. Then when she changed over the calendar the next year, she marked it with a dot again, just to see. The following year on the same day, my sister says, "It's Mikey's birthday, he wants a cake." At Christmas time, my mom went out and bought him a Hot Wheel and a little toy horse. A couple days later, the horse disappeared. My sister didn't touch it, and I had no idea where it went. A couple years later, when we were playing in the backyard, we found it buried in the yard. We brought it back inside and put it on the coffee table, and that night it went missing again, and we still haven't seen it. So, I was a picky eater, still am, but my stepdad used to make me stay at the table till I ate my food. I was also stubborn, so I would sit there till 10 at night when he would finally just let me go to bed. But every night at that table I would see shadows walking around the hallway from room to room. I would just think I was seeing things, but it was constantly, almost every night. So that's pretty much everything I remember. My mom, sister, and I moved out after my mom and stepdad split up. I haven't been back there since. My sister's dad still lives there, and she goes back there on weekends. She's in high school now. She still tells me that the house feels heavy, and she sees shadow people all the time. But that's it. Two. For some context, my grandmother lives in a huge old East Coast house on the countryside of Boston. Many of my family members have reported weird things, being pushed, lurking shadows, and creaking attic, which I won't go near ever to this day. Her house has always freaked me the fuck out, so when she asked if my cousin and I would go stay with her for 3 weeks in the summer, I was hesitant. I went, of course, because it seemed like a fun summer idea, and we were 14 and thought spending time with Grandma could be fun. My grandpa, who passed away when I was 8, was an incredible painter, and my grandma has his paintings everywhere around the house. Most of family members, my mom and her 4 brothers. This will make sense later. I'm 26 now, and I'm still terrified to go there. Haven't been back since. The story. From the moment we stepped into the house, I regretted being there. It just gave me the creeps. My cousin, who knows how scared I am, tried to be the bigger woman and tell me I'm insane. Honestly, I was inclined to believe her as long as I could get some sleep. The first few nights were fine, even though I always thought I saw someone walking up the stairs, into the closet, into my grandma's room, out of the corner of my eye. I tried to ignore it, as I'd never actually seen an entity myself. Just felt odd and would hear things. The room we stayed in had 2 twin beds at the top of the stairs, and like mentioned before, there were my grandpa's paintings. They comforted me, and I felt like he was always watching and protecting. There was a painting in my room, painted by my grandpa, of my cousin's dad as a young boy. The painting was right above her bed, hanging on the wall. The beds sat side by side each other, with a small side table in the middle with a lamp. One night, I couldn't get to sleep no matter how hard I tried. My cousin was already passed out next to me, so I decided to take some sleeping pills. Because my fear was becoming so great in this dark room, I knew I'd be up all night. I slowly drifted off, staring at the painting of her dad, to be awoken in the middle of the night, maybe 4 hours later, unable to speak or move. I felt like there was something in the room, but I was too scared to look, so I laid there until I was able to go to sleep again. Not sure if this is connected, but I always thought it was. When I woke up in the morning, it was to my cousin shouting my name. I honestly was just relieved the night was over, so I got up and looked at her asking what the fuck she's yelling about. She asked me if I had gotten up in the middle of the night. I said no, obviously, and didn't tell her about what happened. She pointed to the foot of the bed and said, "Well, then how did that painting get there?" The painting of her father. I was like, maybe you got up and put it on the floor? And she was like, there's no way that I moved it, or it fell. It would have fallen on her and then flat onto the floor. The painting was leaned up, perfectly placed on the foot of her bed. We racked out any logical explanation, but I don't sleepwalk, neither does she. She is not a heavy sleeper, so if I or someone else got up and moved it, I would have had to lean on my legs on the bed to even reach it. She would have woken up. This freaked me out. It's nothing crazy or super haunting, but I'd like to believe it was my grandpa trying to give her the painting of her father as a gift, or maybe he didn't like it there. 3. I was 7 when I first went to sleepaway camp. Naturally, the camp had a lot of ghost stories. I've always been a believer in the supernatural and saw strange things when I was younger. The story I'm about to tell happened when I was 15, one warm summer night at camp. The camp used to be an all-boys boarding school, but is now a co-ed marine-base camp sitting in a valley. As I mentioned before, when I was 7 I heard stories of ghosts who haunted the camp. These stories always scared me, but it didn't stop me from coming back to camp 5 times. I went when I was 7 to 10, then 15 to 16. One particular story has always been very popular, which is the story of the little red-headed girl. It goes as follows. The headmaster of the boarding school would fly over to the school every year on his son's birthday and drop candy for the students from his airplane. One year he took his young daughter and someone else up in the plane. I don't remember who exactly. Tragically, the plane flew too low and clipped a eucalyptus tree and exploded in a fiery crash up the canyon. Apparently, both bodies of the adults were found burned, and evidence showed that they died upon impact of the plane hitting the ground. But the body of the little girl was never found. To this day, stories of people seeing and even talking to the little red-headed girl are passed on between campers. Apparently, she is known to walk the perimeter road of the camp, asking for mommy and wanting to play. You know, the usual ghost kids stuff. The girls' quad is a rectangular building surrounding a dirt patch in the middle, once grassy, but the drought almost killed it. This particular year I was in the cabin section known as Owl. Owl was one whole side of the rectangle, and had a cement patio out back with clotheslines for campers to hang their wet swimsuits and towels. Owl also shared a large communal bathroom with a couple stalls and sinks. My cabin consisted of 10 girls in total, and we all slept in bunk beds in one room. I chose a bottom bunk because I know from previous years that the room would get very hot, and the lower you were to the ground, the cooler you would be while sleeping. Unfortunately, I wasn't first in the room, so I ended up with the only bed in the bottom that did not back up to a wall on more than one side. Basically, the bed was in the middle of the room and was directly next to the door leading to the back patio. I have always felt more comfortable sleeping next to a wall I can back up against. But I wasn't too upset because I felt safe in a room with so many other people. One night, I woke up because I had to pee. I got up and stumbled my way out of the cabin and out onto the front patio on the quad side and walked to the bathroom. There was a small clock hung on a wooden pillar in the quad, and I remember it displaying that it was sometime between 3 and 4 in the morning. I stepped into the cold, tiled bathroom and turned on the bright white fluorescent lights, which were accompanied by a loud whirring fan sound. I sat down in the toilet and was snapped out of my groggy state by the cold toilet seat. I did my business and began walking back to my room. At this point, I was just excited to crawl back into my sleeping bag and was not thinking about anything scary possibly happening. As I opened the door to the cabin, my eyes were adjusting to the darkness of the room, and I could only see the windows. The curtains were always open so the breeze could blow through, and so the only light in the room at night was from the moonlight. What I saw made me freeze out of pure fear. In the window, I saw a short figure with small hands, with fingers that ended in a spike pressing its hands and face up to the window. I couldn't move for what felt like a minute, but in reality, I quickly got into my bed as my heart was racing, and tears began to well up in my eyes. I told myself it must be a prank. Maybe the counselors or some boys had cut out a piece of paper and stuck it to the window. After 5 minutes of sitting in bed and wondering what I should do, I saw one of my cabin mates, who I will call Nikki, turn over in her top bunk. Quietly, I whispered, "Nikki, are you awake?" "Yeah," she responded. "There's something in the window," I whispered. Nikki was confused what I was talking about. I told her to look at the window next to Alan's bed. She said there was nothing there. At this point, I started to cry out of the realization that this, most likely, wasn't a prank, and began to spiral into a full-blown panic attack. Other girls in the cabin started to wake up due to the commotion and asked what happened. What happened after that isn't super important, but I ended up sleeping in my friend Patricia's bed for the rest of the night. In the morning, I explained to the rest of the girls what happened, with some believing me and some not. They didn't think I was lying. They just didn't believe the story had happened as I described it. I told my counselor and the other counselors, and it wasn't until then that I was reminded of the story. I also went outside to look for any evidence of someone being there. Or maybe just some dust being wiped away on the dirty screen, but nothing. I also determined that the height of the person standing in the window would have been around the waist-to-chest level on me. I didn't experience anything else for the rest of my camp experience, but for the rest of the time I tried to avoid getting up at night. And when I entered the room after the sunset, I would purposely not look at the window out of fear that whoever, or whatever I saw, would come back. 4. So I lived in a haunted house before, but that was 2 years ago. The one I'm in now never seemed to give off much of those vibes. Nothing has really happened. A few months ago, though, I was sitting in the living room, lounging on the couch, when the kitchen door caught my eye. The door is very heavy set. There's no way a breeze or draft could cause it to move. There were no outside doors open or windows, but the door was going back and forth. It would abruptly come close to shutting, then be pulled back again. This was strange, but I didn't pay much mind to it because it never happened again. After that, another instance happened. I sleep with earplugs, and one night I woke up to one missing. I just assumed it had fallen out into my bed or something, so I didn't think about it, and got up to the bathroom. The earplug was on the floor under the sink. Now, as far as I know, I don't sleepwalk, and I had not taken the earplugs out of my bedroom at any time. But I didn't want to dwell on it, and nothing like that ever happened again. Until now. Recently, things have started happening. I keep my hamster and his enclosure in the hallway, and I have a set of battery-operated fairy lights strung around it. Now, the lights can only turn on if you push the switch, but often they'll be turned on and nobody has touched it. Last night, I went through the hall to go to the bathroom. My hamster was scurrying frantically. He looked pretty terrified, and on the floor beside him, one of the fake flower bouquet decorations we have is lying on the floor. It's 3 in the morning, everyone is asleep, and the flowers were not on the floor previously. The vase they're kept in is a tall one, so they couldn't have just fallen out. Someone had to take them out. There is also a small coffee table out in the hall. One of its legs has broken and fallen off again. I just push it away. I go back to bed and fall asleep. In the middle of my sleep, there comes knocking from inside my closet. Since I'm half asleep, I don't remember much, and somehow, I couldn't bring myself to open my eyes and look. I do remember feeling a strong sense of fear, and the presence of a woman standing near me. Things often go missing in my room. I'll place earrings on my bedside table, and a few days later, one of the pair is gone. I search the floor, but there's nothing. There's always a horrible smell of must in my room. I vacuum the floor regularly, have a humidifier, air fresheners, a lot, and the smell refuses to be masked. I've always been kind of a wuss with these things. For my whole life I've slept with a light on. I cannot sleep in the dark unless someone is with me. I also check under my bed every night. Pathetic, I know. But some habits never die. I've had these fears because of the house I lived in previously. Often when I'm in the shower, the curtain will shake, like someone is trying to pull it back. I have a light that hangs from my ceiling with lots of dangly glass bits. They'll clink and move around without anything being near them, or any type of breeze. It's just strange to me because this house has never shown signs of paranormal activity before. So why now? 5. Hi. This happened around August of this year. I'm not sure what we experienced or if there was anything paranormal about it, but whatever. So, this was a hike up to Half Dome. We had a campground about 20 minutes drive away from the trailhead, and the group was composed of me, 18-year-old male, my uncle, 32-year-old male, my uncle's friend, Dee. There were 2 girls with us, but they aren't relevant to the story. My uncle and his friend are both Christians, so there were no substances consumed that could induce the feelings I will be talking about. We get to our campsite, set up camp, and go to sleep after eating. We plan to wake up at 4 and start the hike by 4:30. I randomly wake up at 3:30, like completely wide awake. I look out of my hammock, and I remember feeling this odd feeling that I was woken up by something, and I remember looking out at the moonlit scene. The moon was very bright for some reason, and thinking to myself, it looks like a dream. I lay back in the hammock, but can't go to sleep, and end up waking my uncle and friend at 3:50. My uncle asks me, "Why were you walking around at night?" This is important, and I say no and ask why. He says he woke up for some reason and could hear someone walking around. Not like an animal, but a person. I say, weird, and we brush it off. We get to the trailhead around 4:30, and as everyone is unloading from the car, Dee says he's going to use the bathroom, which there are a couple of before the trailhead. I walk behind him for some time before falling behind and waiting for my uncle, who forgot something in the car. The short, straight road from the parking lot runs directly into a T intersection with the road to the trailhead, and the bathroom is directly across from the intersection through the field a little. Those who have been there know what I'm talking about. We get to the intersection and wait for Dee to come out of the bathroom. We wait about 10 minutes before I go and check the bathroom. He isn't there. I get back to my uncle and tell him that. He says, "Weird, maybe he went back to the car or something," and we decide to wait a bit more. By 5:50 we begin worrying. My uncle goes to check the car while I wait at the intersection to make sure we don't miss him if he went down the road away from the trailhead. My uncle returns, says he isn't there either. We decide maybe he went up to the trailhead without us for some reason, and walk up there in about 10 minutes. He isn't there either. We're kind of baffled now because there are no other logical places he would go. I decide to run back and check the car and bathroom again. I meet him halfway before I get to the intersection. He is sweaty and disheveled, with a weird look in his eyes. I say, "Where have you been?" He says that he went to the bathroom and that when he got back to the intersection that we weren't there, and that he just assumed we went to the trailhead and started walking, and then met me. I say, "What do you mean we waited at the intersection for over half an hour and checked the car, bathroom, the trailhead, and you weren't there?" He says, "Well, I don't know. I went to the bathroom." He then asks me where my uncle is. I say at the trailhead, and he asks me again. I tell him again, and note that it's weird that he asks me twice. As we're crossing the bridge to the trailhead, he sees a light off on the riverbank and exclaims, "Oh, maybe that's him." And then I just look at him and keep walking. I thought his behavior was very strange, like he wasn't thinking straight. We finally get on with the hike, and it goes by as normal, except that we seem to keep losing things, such as my uncle's small red flashlight, one of the girl's gloves, a water bottle, etc. It's like we just simply forgot about the items and couldn't remember where we could have left them. On the way back it got dark and we turned on our flashlights, and as we near the end of the hike, after the 2 waterfalls, it begins to seem as if we've been walking for far too long. My uncle also confirms this, asking me, "Doesn't it seem like it's taking way longer to get back?" I say, "Yeah, I was just thinking that." We keep walking, but it still seems we weren't making any progress. I've been on that trail many times, and as I was walking I couldn't spot any familiar landmarks. It was weird, but there was this odd feeling in the air, sort of a slight menacing feeling. It's hard to describe. I remember thinking it feels like the woods are alive. We remark 3 more times about how long the hike is taking, and begin to laugh at it because it felt so ridiculous. After a bit, we finally and suddenly find ourselves on the final stretch and make it back to the car. Now all of this seemed odd at the time, but I just brushed it off. I only realized how weird those events felt after we got home, and my aunt asks my uncle, "Were you camping?" And he says, "Yeah, how did you know?" As we didn't tell them we were going, as it was kind of last minute. She says that she had an odd dream where she sees my uncle in a tent in a forest somewhere, and someone is outside of his tent. She says she couldn't see who it was, but knew there was a presence there. She says she woke up at around 3, and had this strong urge to pray for him, and she did. My uncle kind of looks at me after that like, "Are you hearing this shit?" I honestly don't know what to make of all this, but I wanted to post it to hear your opinions. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 168. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I got a thing today. I was talking about those those acoustic foam covers for the microphones. I got mine today, and I have to say I'm quite happy with it so far. It's not making the audio perfect by any means, but it is helping isolate unnecessary sound from around the microphone, so it's mostly picking up what's coming from me and projecting into it, so that's a lot better. Using my own pop filter though, it did come with one, but I think mine works a little better. Okay, I'm going to wrap up there because I've got lots to do, although you guys will be getting this on Friday. I'm actually about to begin recording, or continue recording rather, I've already started, with Glitch Monthly, which you guys will have gotten yesterday. Isn't it funny how time works? Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.